morning, it's Ray. I'm coming to you from my mum's absolutely beautiful indoor plant jungle. This video is really a video of heartfelt gratitude for Christmas, for the joy of Christmas, and of course for books. And in this video I'd like to share the books that I received at Christmas as a way of celebrating and just getting super excited about beautiful literature. I think in this day and age where I'm increasingly reading books on my Kindle, there is something even more treasured and lovely about owning and adoring hard copies of books that are special to us. Combined with book sharing in this video, I also want to talk about my reading goals for 2021, starting off though with the books that I received for Christmas this year. The first book that I want to share is the Folio Society edition of Howl's Moving Castle. I adore the publishers of Folio Society. They make really beautiful and extremely thoughtful editions of classic novels. And I think they differ a lot from many beautiful editions of books because they don't just try to mirror kind of the beautiful old hardback book, but they really take into consideration the style of the book, the plot, and the manner in which it is written to contribute to the overall design of the book itself, which I think really makes everything that they publish a true object of art. So if they were to publish a horror story, that would look incredibly different to if they were to publish a children's book, for example, and their children's books especially are just breathtakingly beautiful. So Howl's Moving Castle, which I have read before in my life, but not since I was a young teenager, and which I'm really excited to reread, is a really sensitively written and interesting fantasy story about this moving castle that belongs to a grumpy, melodramatic, flamboyant magician Howl. This castle sort of has portals so that it can be in multiple places at one time, and it's the story of a young girl called Sophie Hatter, who is a hatter and gets cursed by the Wicked Witch of the Waste to become an old woman. She ends up stumbling upon Howl's Moving Castle, getting taken in as a cleaning lady, and the story is about her relationship with the magician Howl and the way in which the two of them face challenges and overcome hurdles together. The Studio Ghibli film is one of my favourite films, and certainly was as a teenager. I think there's a lot of deeper issues in this story which I sort of missed when I watched it as a child / young adult, so I'm super excited to reread that, and I am delighted to have it in such a beautiful edition. Next up is a book that I do not know much about. This book is called October and it's by Katja Ballan. This is a middle grade book. I decided to read it because this is a book that was recommended on the feed of a homeschooling mum that I follow on Instagram, whose child just has this incredibly literature-rich curriculum at home, and I find pretty much everything that she posts relating to children's literature really inspirational, and to be always recommendations of books which are well written and have literary value. So this book is about a girl called October who lives in the woods with her dad. She's 11 years old, and it's a book about a year in her life which changes everything, where they discover a baby owl in the woods and look after it as one strand of the story, but also her mother returns and her dad becomes injured. So that's what it says on the blurb. It's a kind of 3 major things which it revolves around. And I think it's going to be a beautiful coming of age story about, I imagine, the power of the natural world for healing, for escape, for support, and also about the challenges for young people as they go through that really challenging and difficult age of being around 11 and 12 and stepping out of childhood sort of tentatively into adulthood as they become a teenager. I think that for me that's a fascinating age. It's an age where I remember how much I struggled with life, and I genuinely think it's an age of protagonists that is important and relatable and moving to read about. It's so lovely when you find somebody who you follow or you have a friend whose recommendations you just kind of wholeheartedly trust, and so you can get super excited about something they've recommended without actually knowing that much about it in advance. Those are often my very favourite reads. So this next book is a book that is so much larger than I imagined it was going to be, and it is A Poem for Every Night of the Year, and this is the book of mine that really ties in with my resolution for the new year, which is just to read more poetry. It just hasn't been a part of my schedule, and I thought that introducing it by having a book like this where there is just one poem to read a day would be a really nice way to start filtering it back into my daily life, because I do find poetry so beautiful and so thought-provoking and awe-inspiring. I think through poetry we can engage with the world in a way that is completely different and unique to any other way of engaging with the world. It's like, for me, dance does the same thing. It just offers this different portal through which to see the world and through which to feel the world, and therefore completely widens and enriches our experience of being human and being alive. So I'm super excited to be reading more poems again. What I really love about this book is that for every poem that it has, there's just a very short caption underneath the poem at the top which tells you a tiny bit either about what the poem is about the poet, about the poem's history, about its relation to a festival that's linked to that day, for example. So it's a really interesting and engaging book in that sense. It's also just stunningly beautiful, as you can see, this cover with the illustrated floral decorations and the gold gilding. I absolutely love books that look like that. It's just everything that I adore in a cover design. And there's a little seasonal illustration at the beginning of every month of the year showing a tree gradually growing, blossoming and losing its leaves. So I'm excited to engage with poetry a bit more. Connected to that, something that I would really like to do is to learn a poem by heart every month of this year. I would just love to have a bank of poems that are within me that I can treasure and have at all times. And A, that can never be taken away from me, but B, I think you get such a deeper understanding of a poem when it becomes literally a part of your soul by learning it by heart. But yeah, 2 goals related to poetry reading. One is just to read 1 poem a day, and another is to try and learn 12 poems by heart over the course of the year. Linked to poetry, this is not a book, but this is something that I get every year and that I absolutely adore. It's kind of my guilty pleasure calendar that my mum always gets me by Patience Strong, who was a poet who was writing from the 1930s onwards, really, I think up to kind of like the 80s. She died in 1990, and this is a poet who my nana, who died before I was born, was really fond of, who my mum is really fond of. Her poems are completely and utterly sentimental. They are not poems with great literary value, but I nonetheless just find them so inspiring and uplifting and heartwarming, and I've been getting a Patience Strong calendar every year for years and years and years now, and it genuinely provides me with such inner strength throughout the year, even though I know that the poems are like embarrassingly twee. For example, the one on the front of the calendar here for 2021 is called Dawn, and it says, "The sun is old beyond the span of mortal reckoning, yet every golden sunrise is a new and glorious thing. Every time the morning glory lights your window pane, it can be a new beginning. Life can start again." And for some reason, those really saccharine words just help me to feel inspired and to see the beauty in each new day. And I like the reminder that poetry doesn't have to be complicated or deep, and simple words can give you an extra boost of life and energy to get through the day with. And so I'm really happy to have another Patience Strong calendar, and I love her writing. Even though I'm kind of embarrassed to love her writing, I really do, so that was another bookish gift for Christmas. Okay, the penultimate books that I got, this is a set of books, and these are the 3 books written by Laura Wood. I have raved quite a bit on this channel already about how I read Under a Dancing Star. Earlier this year I read it on Kindle and I just adored it. It was so uplifting, so beautifully written, such a joy of a story, quite Eva Ibbotson-esque for me in terms of how comforting and uplifting and entertaining and well written it was, while simultaneously being a really easy read. It's a YA novel. The designs on Laura Wood's young adult book covers are just phenomenal. They're so beautiful. They completely capture and evoke the content of the book. So I got Under a Dancing Star because I know that I'm going to want to reread this probably quite soon, to be honest. And then I got her other 2 young adult novels, which I believe are in quite a similar vein, and so I'm super excited to read those. First one I got is A Snowfall of Silver. It's about a young girl who runs away with hopes of becoming an actress. I believe all of her books are romances. I really enjoy romance as a comfort read. And then the other one that I got is called A Sky Painted Gold. This is a much more summery seeming book, and it's about a girl in 1929 who gets swept into a world of kind of high society and glittering golden parties and has to stay true to herself whilst within that exciting and beautiful world. It seems that Laura Wood's preferred time period is those interwar years, which is just a fascinating historical backdrop to have, and I am so excited to read her other works. The last book that I got is one that I discovered on bookshop.org that I hadn't considered wanting at all and requesting for Christmas, and that book is called Under the Stars, A Journey into Light by Matthew Gore. And I found this book because I searched for the title underneath a dancing star, and this book came up obviously as having a very similar title. This is a piece of nature writing which is about a man's journey to try and find the night sky in the UK in the context of the extreme light pollution that we have within this country. And I think he's talking about the beauty, the value of that night sky, about the way that throughout the majority of history, the stars and the moon have lit up the world for most of our predecessors and have been an integral part of their lived experience, which we just don't have anymore. And for me, the night sky is something that I feel a deep spiritual connection with. Like, I can genuinely kind of feel the light of the moon pouring energy back into my soul. And where I grew up, there is definitely a lot of light pollution. Like, I hardly ever saw any stars during my childhood, and it's only when I've been older and travelled out to significantly more rural places, particularly in Africa and on islands in the Pacific I can think of, for example, that I've been places where there genuinely is little light pollution and actually seen the heavens above me, and those memories make me want to cry with how beautiful they were. So I'm really excited to read some nature writing. I love nature writing and I don't read it that regularly, and I'm particularly excited to read nature writing on the topic of the sky at night. But getting out more to places where I really can see the heavens at night is something that I know I need to try and do, because I think it will add so much value and joy and peace to my life. And so reading a book all about that, I imagine, will inspire me to make more of an effort to get out into places where there is less light pollution and where I can really see the world and the sky above my head. If that fails, maybe it will just be a reminder for me to go to Greenwich Observatory again once things have opened up a bit more, because I went to see their Sky at Night show where you like lie back in the chair and the whole ceiling becomes a lit up sky at night, and some enthusiastic and knowledgeable person talks you through all of the different constellations that you can see above your head from that position, and I just loved that, like the planetarium experience. I've done it once and it was phenomenal. I enjoyed it so very much. So that was the last of the books that I got for Christmas. I'm so incredibly grateful for all of them, and I'm so excited to read them and to share with you my thoughts and opinions on them. I'm already like 99% sure that I'm going to really love all of them and treasure them, and that they will be a special part of 2021, and then while sitting on my bookshelf, a special part of my life to come, because one of the main reasons that I adore books as beautiful hard copy objects is that they become this kind of portal to the time that you are reading them in a way that reading something on a Kindle just cannot do. And I love looking at my bookshelves and remembering when I read those copies and taking myself back to that time in my life, and also to the joy that I felt when I was reading that book. I think books truly are magical objects, not even just while you're reading them, but after you're reading them. Oh, hiding away, one last book related gift that I got was the DVD of the Kenneth Brown version of Much Ado About Nothing. I really wanted to rewatch this after I'd read Under a Dancing Star, because I believe this version of the Shakespeare play film definitely heavily influenced the writing. But then, to my immense surprise, I was unable to stream it anywhere, and so I've had to go for the old school DVD in order to be able to watch it. So that was my last bookish related gift that I got for Christmas. While we're on gift sharing, I also just wanted to quickly highlight a couple of really great vegan brands which were linked to my Christmas. The first of these is Will's Vegan Shoes London. I got a replacement set of my trusty sandals, which I have worn day in, day out during my time in Congo for the last 2 years, and which actually honestly are still going strong. I don't need a replacement, but I just saw that they still have the exact same pair on their website, and I really wanted to get a replacement before they potentially take them down off their website and I can't get them anymore. Will's Vegan Shoes are just a really great ethical footwear brand. The shoes are made in Portugal, and obviously there is no animal cruelty in the process of making their footwear, so I think they're a really great brand to support. Kind of along a similar lines, this actually wasn't a Christmas present, this was a Christmas gift that I bought for myself, and this is a bag by Matt and Nat, which is, I believe, a Canadian vegan company, and they make vegan leather products largely out of recycled plastics. This is a super beautiful handbag. I have never had a handbag in my life. I've been using a Kanken rucksack that I've had for years and years, and it's kind of getting a bit battered and old, and there are just times, not always, but occasional times in my life where I want to have a bag that makes me look like an actual adult. So I finally invested in a really good quality vegan leather bag. Lastly, I also got, you probably heard of them if you're into vegan foods, but some Buja Buja chocolates as a gift that I'm so excited about. They're like the tastiest, richest brand of vegan chocolates. Those are a few other brands that were linked to my Christmas that I think are worth sharing because it can be pretty hard to discover ethical brands. I'm definitely not there yet with ethical consumption, which is kind of an oxymoron in itself, I know. But I always find it really helpful when other people share good brands that they have found. Okay, on to my reading goals for 2021. So as I mentioned earlier in my video, my number one reading goal is to do with poetry. I want to read a poem a day, and I want to try and learn by heart a poem a month. My second reading goal in terms of the amount of books I want to read is just exactly the same that I've had for the last 2 years, which is to read 52 books a year, i.e. one book a week. And for me, this is just the perfect level of reading goal. It's challenging enough that I do have to make an effort to read that many books. I have to kind of ensure that I'm reading I tend to do half an hour a day on work days and an hour a day on weekends or holidays. So I do have to push myself a bit, but at the same time, it's not a completely overwhelming target that's going to take away the joy of reading. It's not a target that forces me to read shorter books in order to reach my numerical goal. Last year, for example, I read War and Peace. I'm able to take on those bigger tomes that I do want to read and include in my kind of reading diet. So my goals are more to do not with how much I read or even with what I read, but with the way in which I engage with what I read. And this is something that I have already very much started on. You don't need a new year to set yourself a new goal. You can do it at any point. One, I want to write a review of every book that I read in 2021. I've started doing that since roughly November with the books I've been reading this year. I think something I need to work at is allowing myself to be okay with writing shorter reviews for some books. Also, a massive New Year's resolution goal challenge for me, which again is a continuation of something I've already started doing at the end of this year, is to just keep producing one video a week on my YouTube channel, and the majority of those will be quite book related in terms of their content. Generally, in terms of what I'm actually reading, I'm very happy to continue with being mostly a mood reader who kind of reads the thing that most appeals to me at the time. I read a few books at the same time, and reading what I want to read is the core way in which reading is an utter joy for me. However, there are a few more sort of specific reading content things that I would love to do next year. One of them is that I would really, really love to reread the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I say reread, I haven't actually personally ever read them, but my parents read them to me at the time the films came out, so pretty long time ago now. And that'll probably be my big read of the year. I try and read one sort of massive work in a year, like last year was, this year was War and Peace. Another thing that I would like to do in relation to reading is to participate in Lucy the Reader's Classics-a-thon for 2021, the aim of which for me is going to be to read one classic book a month, which is an amount that I also read, or slightly over that, in 2020. I think one classic a month, a bit like my personal one book a week target, is a really nice level to ensure that I'm enjoying the classics, that I'm not neglecting them, because there are still so many classic books that I really want to read that I haven't read yet, and I adore reading classic literature. I think it It kind of helps me to bolster up my own self-identity as a reader, whilst also just giving me so much more knowledge with which to explore the other works that I read. One thing that Michael Silverblatt, who hosts the amazing podcast Bookworm, has said that I really love is you can only use what you know, you cannot use what you don't know when you're reading. And the more knowledge that you have about the books which have inspired authors throughout history, the more that you can bring to the text that you're reading and the more that you therefore get out of them. And it's just this kind of self-perpetuating wheel of enjoyment. So reading one classic a month definitely keeps me connected to why I love reading in the first place, to the greatest minds and writers who have ever written. I won't necessarily do it in an enforced one a month way, but over the course of the year I'd like to read at least 12 classic novels. And kind of linked to that, I also have some plans to do some videos particularly relating to classic children's literature, which is a particular passion of mine. I am a primary teacher in my day job, and I also just have always loved and adored classic children's literature. So more on that in the new year, but I am going to be starting doing a series of videos related to and doing perhaps more deep dives into individual works of classic children's literature. So I am very excited for those books to be a part of my year and my reading in 2021. I hope that you enjoyed watching this video. Please do comment down below any of your own reading goals for the upcoming year. I'd love to see what you're planning to do with your reading in 2021, and also any books that you're particularly excited to read in the upcoming year, perhaps even any books you received for Christmas that you're especially excited to be reading. Thank you so much for watching. Happy New Year, and I'll see you in the next video.